we go. Pardon me. So that worked out really well, and things took off from there, dude. Next thing I know, G-Rap brought me into Chum King one day. Shortly thereafter, he needed a remix done. I forget what record it was for, but it might have been for the Cali album. I don't remember, but Epic has signed, Cold Chillin' has signed to Epic Sony, and he had a new A&R, Wanda Booth. And he brought me into the session, and I remixed the record, and she came in. And, you know, she was talking to me. We vibed really well. And she's like, who is this guy right here? And he was like, that's Dr. Butcher. And, you know, she was like, we need him on this project. That's when he was prepping to do 456 album. And she said, hey, I want you on this whole project. I want you to take lead with the 456 album. I was nervous because I had never produced a whole album before. And then G-Rap got into some issues in the street. He really wasn't writing. You know, he had so much trouble on his hand. They needed me to take lead, and I was probably the only person he really trusted at the time. So they were shipping us around to all these various studios to record the record and stuff. And a lot of it was songs that we had recorded at his house with DJ, with the setup he had. And he was like, yo, I can't really write right now, man, so we're going to remix a lot of these records. And, you know, he had his lyrics done. I just had to refresh a lot of the tracks, and that's what most of that was. The only new tracks on there were Money on My Brain. It was probably the only thing. Money on My Brain, The Fast Life, are probably the only songs that he actually had to sit down and pen to. Having Nas up there inspired him. We brought Nas to the studio. And then I brought MF Grimm and B1 into the studio to do Money on My Brain and Shit Ain't Never Gonna Change. And that inspired him to get back to writing and stuff. That helped him. But outside of that, everything, I had to sit and just remix the whole project, dude. And it was hard, but we got it done, and it worked out well. It wasn't super successful because music was changing. You know, Bad Boy was changing the landscape of music at the time. But nowadays, you know, I go back and look at comments for a lot of things that were done, and like, you know, it's people love that album. You know, love 4, 5, 6. You know, so it's great. It's all good. You know, things happen where they're supposed to happen on God's time. You know.
Exactly. At what point do you reteam with Large Professor after he leaves Main Source and start working on his LP?
Right away. He and I were like brothers. So Large, you know, was dealing with some stuff in life as well. You know, he got married. Me and my wife were like best man, maid of honor at his wedding. You know, he just did a short thing. And, you know, he would confide in me in a lot of things, you know, and he was going through some stuff. And I was actively going to church and Bible study and stuff like that, along with music. And I was like, yo, dude, you might have to, you know, do some soul searching. You know, come with me for, you know, a class, you know, and just hang out with me. And he did, and some things touched him. We were going to a church out in Brooklyn with Dr. A.R. Bernard, Christ Christian Life Center. And, you know, he just got into that and kind of found his way. And in the midst of that, he left them. He got his situation in Geffen. And he was like, yo, you and I are going to roll now. You know, like it's going to be us two. So that's where that started. But we were always, you know, if he did remixes, I was always in the studio doing scratches for him. And Steve Stout, you know, Beat Nuts connected me to Steve Stout, Kid and playing them. I was doing stuff for TLC because Steve was managing them. And, you know, Left Eye, you know, in the studio putting their show tapes together. I had a really great relationship with Steve Stout. So, you know, me and Large, we always stayed together. It was like a nucleus, you know what I'm saying? Like music, without music, we were going to rock together. You know what I'm saying? With everybody around me, it was kind of like that. We had the music thing, the synergy there with that, but outside of that, we had brotherly type relationships. So if the music wasn't there, we would still get down with each other, you know, so right. It was a good thing.
That LP ended up getting shelved. What do you remember about that time?
It was a struggle. I lived in Manhattan on 92nd Street and 2nd Avenue. And we were going to various studios, and then he locked in a Steely Dan studio that was like on 90th Street and 2nd Avenue. So it was easy for me to leave work and leave my home and just walk around the corner to the studio. And it was tough, man. Like, I just wanted to chill. I remember him, he did those vocals over maybe 50 to 100 times. No exaggeration, bro. Like, he was just challenging himself. Every day he would leave the studio and call me, I got it, Butch. I'm going to do it again tonight. I got it. He would go back to the studio and record him 20 more times. A lot of pressure was on him. You know, things again, the landscape of hip hop was changing, and he was caught right in the middle of it, and the stakes were high. You know, they was expecting a lot from the dude, and he was feeling the pressure. And so it was taking him a while to get off that. And, you know, the label had the roots. We finally got the project done. I remember them sending us to Atlanta to perform and do some interviews. And during the show, Large was kind of nervous, or stuff was going on. He just wasn't in there. He was nervous. And I was like, yo, I got it. I'm going to take control of it. So I looked to the side. Nas is standing on the side of the stage. And I was like, oh, man. I ran to him. I was like, bro, I need a huge favor. I need to bring you out. Large is like, you know, he's not really here tonight, dude. I need you to come lift him up. And I'll key you. He said, I got you. Don't worry about it. So during the set, the crowd embraces him. The crowd is going crazy. That picked him up immediately. He started doing front door and all that stuff. I was like, come on. I just threw joints on, and Nas went on the stage, and the crowd just went crazy. And Large sees him. Man, they just tore the place down. And it got back to the label. The A&R was there, and he was like, yo, you saved my job, bro. Like, I thought this was going to be a terrible situation. You saved my job. And he said, I'm going to make sure the label knows. And, you know, things were good then because of the reception, the radio, and all the notification and comments that we're getting from the DJs around the Atlanta area were great. So we thought it was going on, but, you know, they pulled the plug at the end, you know, and things didn't happen, you know, but he ended up putting it out later. And then everyone had kind of moved on to other projects. I was just getting really more into the production side and doing more, so.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Akinyele?
Yes. So while Large, you know, he did the first Vagina Diner project for Akinyele. His career took off. He got busy. He signed with Rush. And Russell Simmons kept that dude busy, producing everybody. So he really didn't have much time to dedicate an album to Akinyele or Nas. You know, that's why he's the one who had to go get Pete Rock, Q-Tip, and, you know, other cats to come and help him with the Nas album because he didn't have time. He was busy doing a lot of work for Rush. And in that midst of that, once I finished 4, 5, 6, I ended up moving to Left Rack City where Akinyele lived. You know, we had met, we knew each other. And he, another one, brought me in to do a remix. And he loved the remix so much, he's like, yo, you doing my album, dude. And I brought in an old friend of mine, my man CJ Moore, to mix it. And CJ Moore was signed to Tommy Boy as an artist under a group called Black by Demand. He was the rapper in the group. And so he came in, but he worked with Paul C. I mean, he had been engineering since he was like 13, 14 years old. Like, dude was incredible engineering with Paul C. Then 2 of the main engineers for 1212 Studios. So I brought him in. It's just out the gate because he was also an artist. And we all connected. We had a really good synergy amongst us. Akinyele was like, okay, I'm good right now. And CJ just turned, you know, with his engineering prowess, man, the music was sounding great. Ak was studying Dr. Dre and them. He's like, yo, our music is big, man. He loved it. And we just worked from there, man. We spent a lot of time. We recorded, I don't know, man, an unseen amount of records, probably 3, 4 hours worth of music we recorded. Because he was jumping from label to label. Ak had a situation on every label in the record industry, dude. So he would get the deal, get in advance, and leave the label and go get another one. I mean, he was just collecting advances every way he went, dude. So it was funny. And then we met these cats, Mark Murray, who was down with Color Me Bad, the production team behind Color Me Bad. And it was a whole crew of dudes, but Mark Murray was the hip-hop producer at the time. And LL reached out to me to produce him. I gave him some music. And at the same time, he was working with Mark Murray. I didn't know that. But we all connected, and then we were bringing Mark in because Mark played instruments and all that stuff. And he was from Oklahoma. He had more of a country vibe, so he enjoyed us because we had that New York street sound. But together, we was putting some stuff down, dude, and it was coming out really nice. And his whole crew, the R&B dudes, you know, I would bring my set over there. I would leave. They would break my samplers and steal all my drums and everything out of my stuff. But it was all good. Yeah, they were funny dudes, man. It was like, okay, we got it, man. We stole everything you had in your machine, dude, but thank you. If you need something, let us know. You know, so they needed that because it put some life into their music. You know, they were using stock drum kits from the Roland Machines and Trinity and stuff, which were cool. But when I started hitting them with samples, it made the music took on some really flavor. And, you know, they was like, oh, this is it. This is it. So, you know, it was cool. It was a lot of fun, man. But I learned a lot being around that group, seeing how they operate as a network, you know, with singers, rappers, multi-types of producers. One cat was Nardo was a church-raised keyboardist. Another cat was a classically trained musician. And then you had Mark Murray, who was a multi-instrumentalist, but he was hip-hop face, geared towards hip-hop. And together, man, they would just put out hits. The dudes were some bad boys, you know. And I like that, you know. It helped me elevate my stuff, so that was great.